things that I think are going to happen. 5 things I think are going to happen this year for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I really think it's going to make you proud. We'll discuss that today here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
People, what is going on, man? This is Tony Wiggins here, your host of Locked On Jaguars, your daily podcast, because we're your team every day and we're free on all platforms. We thank you for making us your first listen as always. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. And BetOnline is where the game starts. I know you guys have heard this from me before, that I've covered this team professionally for about 13 years, but I put more sweat equity than that in ever since their inception or the beginning of this franchise back in 1995. I pretty much covered it on an unofficial basis half the time, but the rest of the time it's pretty much been as more than a fan. We're going to talk about, we've been doing a 5-part series every day, or 4-part series with 5 things every single day that we wanted to point out. And we are hitting our crescendo today because we're going to talk about 5 things that I think are going to happen. And I think those are going to be things that you guys are happy about. However, before I start naming those 5 things, I have to get into this. By the way, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube page and bring your friends and tell them to. And we're free on all platforms. But someone, as I did this outline last night, hoping obviously that no crazy news broke that we had to talk about, that I didn't have to change subjects. I'm going to get into those 5 things in segments 2 and 3. There was someone that asked me a question this morning that really made me feel like I have to answer that question before I explain this podcast, because I don't want it to get this feeling that I'm just trying to sell you sunshine and rainbows. I've always been a guy who tells the truth. I don't go by the name Truth Teller. That's my man, Rick Ballou. Shout out to Rick Ballou, the sideline report. I saw him here yesterday in my office. But I have always prided myself in just keeping it real and not letting people have fake optimism. A guy, I took a drive this morning in a car service. A very nice gentleman asked me, "Are you a Jaguars fan?" And I said, "That's a good question." Not knocking anybody that's a fan of a team that does a podcast. We have some probably on our Locked On network. I know Ross Jackson, who does Locked On Saints, absolutely loves the Saints. He's from New Orleans, and he ain't going to pull no teeth about it. It's just the way it is. That's great. I have to kind of pull myself back from it a little bit and try to, here's where my objectivity has to come from. The fact that for most of my adult life, for most of my life prior to 1997, I was almost 30 years old, or 1995, I was 26. The Jaguars didn't have a team. I rooted for Washington. I grew up half my life in Jacksonville, half my life in Washington as of that point. Now, for the last 25 years or so, I've been solely here back in Jacksonville. I was born in Jacksonville, but most of my life before 26 or 27, I probably spent exactly 13 years, 13 and a half, 14 years in both places for various reasons. I was actually living in Prince George's County, Maryland, a suburb of D.C., when the Jaguars were awarded the team. And my mother had lived there pretty much my entire life. My mom moved back to Jacksonville in 1998. So it's different for me than, say, someone like Ross, who was born in New Orleans and the Saints were already there. It's different for me a little bit than someone, and it doesn't mean that I'm trying to justify not being a guy who's called a fan. Versus what I'm saying is this is just my perspective, and I'm being honest with you. So therefore, when I tell you these 5 things to look forward to this year, know that that's me being honest too. That's not me being a fan and having optimism and hope. This is what I think is going to happen. And when I've criticized the team in the past, I haven't criticized them as an angry fan, even though that's all right. If that's who you are, that's fine. Be an angry fan and let your emotions come out. It all needs to go into this good pot of jambalaya that we're trying to cook up, right? So, but for me, it was always objective, and it was what I saw. This is what's going on. It's a dumpster fire, and it's for this reason, that reason, that this is what I saw. So he stumped me a little bit today, and I said I was going to start this podcast by basically explaining that I'm a fan of Jacksonville, Florida. I'm a fan of the people of Jacksonville, Florida. And sometimes on social media, you wouldn't be able to tell because me and some people that have certain ideas that are different from mine, we kind of go at it a little bit. And there's certain things that I'm uncompromising about. One thing about my personality, too, and anybody that knows me knows this, I'm not claiming to be a grizzly bear. When somebody threatens me online or something like that, people that know me laugh because they know it's like basically going to a zoo and looking in at a lion and telling them that you whoop his ass if you come across that fence. And not that I'm a lion and not that you can't beat me, but my thing is this: I'm so unbothered, I'm so afraid, I'm so unafraid of you doing that. It's not even funny. You're wasting your breath. And what that comes from is, and what that attaches to with the Jaguars is, I don't like bullies. And everyone knows I don't like bullies. I don't like, don't try to bully me. If I'm a guy that takes up for people against bullies, you can't bully me, right? The Jaguars have been bullied. The fans have been bullied. This city has been bullied almost to the point. And the thing is, it's not into submission. They're not going nowhere. We know that the fans and the people and the air that we breathe are not, and the community isn't responsible for that losing that has been going on down there for two decades. We know that. But other people sit here and they talk about the city of Jacksonville like they need to move the team. If you move the team and kept that same product that you had here for the last couple of decades, it ain't going to be no different than you put them in whatever metropolis you take them to. So saying that Jaguar fans suck and the city can't do this and the city ain't, that to me is a form of bullying. And it's also like talking to a lion and telling them what you're going to do to him. You ain't going to do nothing because we know what you're saying isn't factual and it's not true. So all of that bass in your voice doesn't matter. So to describe or to make it clear of whether I'm a fan of the Jaguars, I cover the team. I wasn't born into it because I was born before the team. I was grown before this team. I was a grown man with one kid on the way when this team came into reality. But I love this city. And the reason why I can't wait to get to segment 3 to tell you how I feel about what's going to happen this year is because it's like I have a Christmas present for you and I want you to open it. So I'm not speaking to you as a fan. I don't even act like a fan every day. And I feel if I'm too much of a fan, I won't be objective. And it's because I have an undying love for this city and this community that I actually have to go overboard to talk about because so many people who aren't from here always hate on our community. They try to treat us like we are garbage dumpster juice, and that's not what we are. If you experience the fandom of the Jacksonville Jaguars, you understand that this is super, super special, which why I used to get mad at that viability crap that they used to talk about all the time and whether or not we're really committed. Man, these people are here more committed to you and Shah Khan and this city and the NFL than anything you could ever imagine. And this place, the one thing that coach we had last year said that if we ever start winning here, this place is going to go crazy. And it's true. So I'm going to tell you 5 things that I think is going to happen with this new regime under Doug Peterson. And the reason I mentioned him first is because even though it's a tease to get to the bigger point, I ain't going to make you wait. I think the quarterback and the coach combination that I have spoken on forever, whether it be Tomlin and Roethlisberger, whether it was Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, whether it's Mahomes and Andy Reid, whether it's Brady and Belichick, which is the ultimate duo. I always said that that's when you know you got it right. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have it right, and I'm going to explain why that's the number one thing I have, that this quarterback and this coaching duo with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. It's going to manifest itself in camp and this year. That is the absolute right combination. So that's a big, big get at the beginning of this new regime. And I'll talk about that in depth in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I tell you about betonline.net, which is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs, which just ended, by the way, and Major League Baseball. I hope y'all won some money. I know a lot of people around here in Jacksonville who were going for the Tampa Bay Lightning who lost, but that's okay. You can regroup by finding out if the Yankees are going to pull it off or if the beloved Braves will get everything going back into a positive direction like they did when they won. The only place you can go is betonline.net because it remains your best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action because BetOnline is where the game starts. Just as you start here with me every single day and every single episode on Locked On Jaguars, and we're grateful that you make us your first listen. I've already told you the first thing that I think is going to happen that's going to be positive for the Jaguars. Now, mind you, I had no intention of naming 5 positive things that were going to happen. But when I named the 5 things that I was sure were going to happen, they all turned out to be positive. So therefore, the fan in me or the lover of Jacksonville in me couldn't wait to tell you because I know you want to hear it. So number 1 is the quarterback-coach combo. You will see evidence that they absolutely got it right this time. Shad Khan said that before when he hired Urban Meyer. He says, I got it right this time. Nope, no, you didn't. So I think you did with Doug Peterson. I think Doug Peterson has done and said everything right. Training camp will show you, and it'll be the demonstrated performance that everything that he says is something that he meant because you're going to see him interact on a daily basis with Trevor Lawrence. There was a question I asked him. It was really the first question I asked him since he became head coach. It might be the only one. I asked him because I know he was still coaching with kid gloves with him because of what they've been through, and he talked about it. He didn't mention it. I called it trauma, but he didn't necessarily call it that. But with everything that they've been through in recent history, and I asked him at some point, when does he start pushing? And when does he start being a coach that sort of like uses some negative things and constructive criticism? And he said it comes with time. He says the more they start to trust you, the more that you're going to do it. That's what you're going to see in training camp. At some point, you're going to see that in training camp. I can't wait for the first time that Trevor doesn't have the greatest day, and Trevor comes out and says, I didn't have the greatest day. And Doug Peterson says he didn't have his greatest day. He has to do this. He has to do that. We're going to continue to work. It's going to be all right. Because, see, that to me is better than the fake we are all together and hugging Urban on the sideline when you knew there was an inferno going on in the locker room and behind the scenes, but they were putting on a public front. I'd rather have a public constructive view of the fact that you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but whatever days we have, we're going to have them together. And I think at some point you're going to see that because to me, that's the first step before the results come in. You have to be that way. I think there's going to be a certain amount of trust. I think there's going to be a certain amount of criticism that can happen because of that trust, and no one will take it personal or no one will be CYA covering their you-know-what and pointing the finger and blaming other people. I think when things go wrong, you're going to see Doug Peterson up at the podium, and he's going to be saying things to the public that the team won't be sitting looking at him with the side eye, and the other coaches won't be looking at him with the side, like who is responsible for stuff, who's accountable for stuff. So the first thing is I think we got it right, and I think it'll become evident to everyone else that the quarterback/coach combo is the one that they need in order to start having some success in the near future. Number 2, this touches on something that we hit on earlier when we talked about where the chunk plays and the big plays and the easy points going to come from. There will be an emergence of very combustible and talented playmakers on this team. There will be an emergence of guys that can make things happen, multiple people who will be able to score and make big points. The thing is 2 years ago, it was looked at Laviska Shenault was that guy, and then last year coming in camp because of his rookie year, he was going to be that guy. He was the first guy you talked about. He may be the 3rd or 4th guy now that you talk about and speak on, or maybe even the 5th guy when And it's not because he fell off or tapered off a little bit last year as a second-year player, but it's really because that's the way it's supposed to be, that the better you get, the guy who used to be your most explosive player when you couldn't win a bunch of games now can be explosive, but he's now your fifth best player. He's still making plays, but you have Travis Etienne above him. You have James Robinson when he gets back above him. I think Evan Ingram and also Christian Kirk. There are four guys that I believe at any point can contribute to the Jaguars being able to get chunk plays and easy points and make the game plan very, very hard for the opposing defensive coordinator. So, number 3, rookies will show immediate impact for the Jaguars. I believe the rookies, specifically the guys chosen early in the first round, as well as the guys chosen just on day 1 and day 2 period, between Travon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma, all of these guys, I think they're going to have an immediate impact on this football team. And I think they're going to show up and not be disadvantages. In fact, they're going to add size, speed, a little bit of pop. I believe Fortner, whenever he gets a chance on the offensive line, I think he's going to be able to, if he's not going to contend for a starting position right away, he's going to, Luke Fortner, the rookie out of Kentucky, he's going to be able to at least be a swing guy and a depth guy that's going to be able to hold his own. They're going to be very, very coachable and versatile for this football team. So I think you're going to get immediate impact from rookies, and I think that's going to be a very, very good thing, because that's going to also add in trust of the front office and trust of Trent Baalke and the scouting department that they actually have their finger on the pulse of the team. I'm going to name the fourth one before we go into our third segment. I think Cam Robinson is going to show me and everybody else why the Jaguars were correct in making sure they kept him here. They kept him here long term. And I think the biggest difference is going to be coaching. And the fact that the talent will improve around him, and he doesn't have to go out there and be Walter Jones every play, which he wasn't capable of doing anyway. But he doesn't have to be that in order for the Jaguars to have at least a chance to look normal. I think the fact that the rest of the team is going to be built up, and the fact that they have shored up the offensive line in other areas, is going to give him a chance to hopefully not have to do too much and just do his job. And if he does that, the Jaguars, they evaluated him as a guy that they think can, at a very minimum, be very adequate at left tackle. Well, I think it starts to look even better if he plays the same way he played last year, stays healthy, and the offense is actually productive, because there's nothing better for an offensive line than to be ahead on the count and be ahead on the down and distance, and also be ahead on the scoreboard so that you can now dictate what you're going to do and you can start moving some furniture. So I think Cam Robinson will show us all, including me, that he was well worth the money. If those four things happen, then that means the Jaguars might be pretty competitive. So I'm going to tell you guys in segment 5, and it's going to tie in to when that guy asked me, are you a fan of the Jaguars? And you'll understand why I answered the question the way that I answered it. It's the same way I answered it for you here in segment 1. We'll do all that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars, after I let you know about rockauto.com. You're driving around on bad auto parts with bad accessories, you'll find out real quick when you're on the side of the road that you shouldn't have gone where you went when you got those parts and accessories. You should have gone to rockauto.com. Why? Because you can trust them. For 2 decades, they have delivered. And when I say delivered, they have delivered for do-it-yourselfers as well as anyone else who wants to buy them and hire someone to fix their vehicle and fix their car. You don't have to answer crazy questions at a chain store, and you get to save 30, 50, and even sometimes 100% on parts and accessories. How do you do it? Well, you just get on your laptop or your device and you go to rockauto.com, and boom, there it is. The website will pop up, and they're going to ask you a question. There's a box. How did you hear about us? You should make sure you put the 2 words "locked on" in that box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts and accessories your car, any make or model, will ever need are at rockauto.com. You're here with me, making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. You can make your next listen Locked On NFL. Of course, you guys know I host a Wednesday show with James Rapine, but we have great guests on Monday through Friday, and it's available on all platforms, and it's a real comprehensive look with subjects from around the NFL, from different voices, and people that really cover the NFL league-wide. So make sure you like, subscribe, and tell people about the YouTube page as well, the Locked On NFL podcast. It's free on all platforms, just like this one, wherever you get your podcast. All right, so number 5, let me review real quick number 4 of our preview of training camp and things that I think will happen. Quarterback coach combo, I think, is going to prove evident that it is worth all of the stuff we've gone through in the past. We got a generational quarterback. We got a Super Bowl winning head coach. The emergence of talented playmakers will happen. It'll be multiple guys that can score really, really quick or get yards in bunches and change the field position. Rookies will be immediately impactful. I think that's helped by the fact that they're insulated a little bit about the peaks and the parts that are around them. And then they went for athletic profiles, guys that were big, strong, and fast. And it's easy for those guys to adjust to the NFL because while they're learning all the nuances of the NFL, they can at least be big, strong, and fast, right? So that's a good thing that they don't have to come in here and totally work on their body so much. And Cam Robinson, the left tackle, who was re-signed after having 2 straight years of the franchise tag to a long-term deal by the Jaguars, will, with the help and aid of more talent and different coaches and a different philosophy, will show why he was really, really worth the money to people who were skeptical like me when the Jaguars kept him on a long-term deal. So if all of those things happen, here's number 5. It's going to happen, and I believe it's going to happen. I think at the end of the day, regardless of the record, regardless of how the season actually turns out, which I don't think is going to turn out as poorly as all the other ones have, the fans will feel good about the future of the team. And it doesn't have to be reflective. I think during the season, while the season is being played out, there will not be a moment that we've had here in Jacksonville where sometimes it's happened in week 3, sometimes it's happened in week 5, sometimes it's happened in week 8 or by week 9, where fans were talking about the draft next year. They were already talking about free agency of the following year. I don't think we're ever going to hit a point this year where you're not about right nowism, where you're not about what's going on with this team, where you're not invested in the everyday function of the Jaguars and their progress. I don't think there's ever going to reach a point where you're just not proud to watch what's happening in front of you, where you start thinking about the future. And that's because of all the things that I've mentioned here today. I really do believe, y'all, we're finally on the horizon of it actually being over. And what I mean about being over is hopelessness, thinking about the future, wondering if it's ever going to happen for you as a Jaguar fan. Just wanting something I told you the Jaguar players should be thinking about, which is baby steps. And thinking and asking yourself, are you ever going to have a good football team? I think those doubts start to go away this year. And I think all the way up through week 17, you guys will have something on the field that you can be proud of and that you'll be invested in. And when that happens, guess what else is going to stop? The bullying that don't work anyway. Somebody said this, I think it was somebody off my own network, probably was tongue-in-cheek. They said, I forgot Trevon Walker even got drafted by Jacksonville. That's just how irrelevant they are. That's going to stop. There's going to come a moment that that's not the thing anymore. The Jaguars actually give you something to be proud of. Aren't you glad you're probably glad to hear it. You probably just say, okay, whatever, we want to see it. But doesn't it make you feel a little bit better that I explained my affiliation and my affinity for the city, and that this is not just some fan who's just running off at the mouth telling you to be hopeful and optimistic? Because if I was doing that, I would be doing the exact same thing that has gone on here for the last 20-something years, hoping and wishing. That's not what I'm doing. I'm objectively telling you, as a guy who doesn't call himself a Jaguar fan, who calls himself a fan of Jacksonville, that I honestly do think that this thing is going to be turned around, and this team will give you something to be proud of here in 2022. We're going to be covering all kinds of stuff. We're going to be doing some work within the division around the network here at Locked On. We're going to talk to the opponents, sort of a mini crossover, if you will, talking to all of the opponents from everyone that's on the Jaguars schedule as we lead up into training camp. But these are the things that I think, and I'm on tape. This is like I swore in the court. This is evidence. It's on the record. Your Honor, it can never be taken away. You can always come back and pull it up and debate me whether or not these things happen. But this is what I do believe you have in store for you this year. And hopefully you enjoyed this week's shows and it told you why. Make sure you tune in and tell everyone to subscribe to the free on all platforms podcast that is Locked On Jaguars and Locked On NFL. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. Make sure you like and subscribe and take care of each other this glorious weekend. The next time you see me, I will be a year older. My birthday is Sunday. So happy birthday to me and happy weekend to you guys. And thank you for joining me on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. I hope I'm right about 2022 because if I am, that means there'll be a happier and more joyful you as a Jaguar fans because I know y'all deserve it. Y'all take care. Take care of each other until I see you next time.